All right, everyone. I am here with Bob Glazer to talk all thing customer experience and company culture and what that does for an organization. How does it help grow a company, plus much, much more. I'm not going to go too deep into Bob's bio. Everything will be linked below and described, so check that out in a moment. But in short, Bob's company, Acceleration Partners, has grown by 25% in consecutive years since 2007. Not many organizations can say that. It is the largest company of its kind, and it has been voted the best place to work by a myriad of recognizable publications and outlets like Glassdoor, Entrepreneur, Fortune, and many, many others. Bob, I'm going to kick it off by asking you, how has company culture helped fuel that growth since 2007 and even beyond that?
Yeah, it's been a huge part of it, and I think I wouldn't be honest if I didn't say that at one point I really didn't believe in company culture because I would go into these companies and I'd see these phrases all over the walls, and it was like people had to do it, and it was out of Dilbert, and no one behaved that way, and I really thought it was a bunch of garbage. It wasn't actually until I was at a conference. One of my business heroes is Herb Kelleher of Southwest, and someone was talking about an interview with Herb Kelleher, and I didn't realize this, but Southwest, I think from 1980 to 2000, made more money than the entire airline industry in the U.S. And they had some interesting strategies and some other stuff that they did. But when they said to Kelleher, what was it that set your company apart? His entire answer was culture. And so I actually went back and started rethinking that and looking at what a good culture was. But I think for us, and particularly being a service business, I think Simon Sinek said it best. I'll probably butcher it, but customers will never love your company if employees don't first. So if you don't have service employees, if you make widgets, might be one thing, might show up as a defect in the widget somewhere. But if you don't have people that like to come to work and are engaged, I don't know how you can have a good customer experience. So I think we've had a couple sort of I would say upgrades to the culture and some tweaks as we've grown, but it's been fundamental for us the whole way through.
So I want to unpack one thing that you just said there. In the beginning, so let's say over a decade ago, you found it to be maybe fluffy and just full of platitudes. Why is it that some leaders still find it to be that way? If you
It's a good question, and I think it's maybe because they see I need to see things for myself. It's great to read theory, and as I got involved in EO, and I got involved in other organizations, and when they were on together, and I kept meeting people who were running these great companies, I would see the same themes over and over again. They had mission, they had vision, they had values, but it was very different than those other companies. One of my favorite stories that I heard on a podcast was when Johnson & Johnson had the massive Tylenol scare. The CEO came out and read the credo, as the press release for why they were doing what they were doing, that the founders had written, or the team had written, 50 years ago. So I actually think I just hadn't seen like what it looked like and what real culture looked like, and really having alignment between what it is you're saying, and I published an article this morning on kind of how to spot toxic companies and before you take the job. And one of the things is, like, if you have these Dilbert core values that anyone could say all over the wall with like 10 sentences of just generic stuff, like that's worse than nothing. To me, a culture and core values have a differentiated point of view. My version of a great culture is probably different than your version of a great culture, or another person of a great culture, but there's alignment between what people are saying and what they're doing.
What does it say about a leader that continues to not put an emphasis on company culture, or they pay lip service to it?
Yeah, I mean, they have it by default or by design, right? They have a culture. And so what you'd say is, if I asked a bunch of other people, they would tell me what the culture was. It was exactly the behaviors that the leadership team rewarded and what they praised. And so it's there. So I think it's just a matter of whether people actually want to be intentional and lean into that. one of the things that I say when I'm speaking and talking about is like, just fly your flag. Like, if you're a competitive, narcissistic, win at all cost person, there's plenty of other people out there like that. Like, just tell people that and recruit those people and build a company in that. But don't say, we win together and we do all this stuff, which just isn't you. I just think people have this really difficult time with authenticity. The first thing I'll say to someone when I'm interviewing and talking about my team, I'm like, here's why you would love working for me in the company, and here's why you'll hate it. We are not for everyone. We're trying to find the 1% of people that like the mission that we're on and the values that we want people to live by.
Does that make it harder for you to recruit people?
Yeah, very hard to recruit.
So it's almost like self-sabotage, but by design.
by design. You're stealing the word. It's interesting. A few really good CTOs. I don't know if you know JT McCormick.
Yeah.
Gary Ridge from WD-40. I see more people using the word tribe. Like this is our tribe. This is what we do. And again, if you like this, you want to join our tribe, great. And if not, there's other tribes for you. And I really believe. I have a good friend who has a great company culture. They're like the opposite of ours. They're kind of like practical jokers, and they dress up a lot and they do stuff. And like, that's not me. I'd be inauthentic if I was doing that stuff. So to me, it's just authenticity. I always say, if people come here and they don't like it, I really hope they don't like it for exactly what we said that we do and what we are. And they say, oh, that's what they meant by own it, or that's what they meant by embrace relationships. Not that, hey, these guys said one thing and did another. It's kind of like, I use the analogy like you're like a running back who went to the team and realized the team runs a passing offense, and they need to go into a different system. It's not the right system for them.
There's a lot of people that are critical of Netflix's culture as being too intense. And, that's fine to have your own opinion. That culture wasn't built for your hypo work ethic, perhaps, or the way that you like to pave the organization. And then there's Zappos. That's a little bit more freewheeling and fun, and as they say, weird. And that's one thing that I'm happy that you brought up, is that your culture is according to the flag that you bear. And not everybody has to like your culture. Not everybody has to join you, and that's fine. And there's been times when we've recruited for a hospitality company where people have, I'm paraphrasing, but said, what, I don't think this is for us. And we kind of agreed, and it was just an amicable handshake, and off you go. After listening to Herb Kelleher speak, what did you do next? How did you educate yourself? How did you, could you unpack that? Like, what did you do to start building your culture? Because I'm finding that, back then there was a scarcity of education in what to do next. I think now there's more, right? There's people like yourself who are very active on LinkedIn and giving some tidbits, but what did you do to start building your culture?
Yeah, so just I was someone telling a story of as interviewing Herb. It wasn't Herb, just for the factually. I like to be factually correct, but it was actually about the same time that we started adopting the traction system, which is similar to Gazelle's. And the alignment built into that, where we really started to identify core values, the instructions that they are not to be aspirational, they are to be the things that your best employees are, testing those, then aligning that with our interviewing, with our performance review program, and really saying, oh, this is how the key thing around real vision and values is how you operationalize them, right? If they're just on, that everyone knows them, right? You can't pull out I've seen the Ritz-Carlton and some organizations, brag about their 8 core values, and people pull out a card. Like, if you need a card to know them, then you can't make decisions on them. Like, if you don't, ours are own it, embrace relationships, and excel and improve. You have to know that. You may not get the sub-sentence under it correctly, but those are the awards that we give out. Those are the praise that we give out. So I really started to see when we started to operationalize it, what that looked like. And then that was the difference between, again, not I could say, I think there are things that we think are bad cultures, but a lot like universally bad, like screaming at people and underpaying them and stuff like that. But in general, if people are operationalizing values that they've stated, if they're a competitive culture and 80% of the bonuses go to the top 20% of the people, and the company events are all competition, and they reform and they own that and put that out there, then don't complain that the culture's competitive, right? If they're acting like that. But if they said, hey, we're all get together and kumbaya, and then they're all competitive. That's the alignment. And when I do the cultural onboarding on our company, and I find that what is more frustrating to everyone, they're the companies that just don't articulate their values, but people know what they are. Those companies, people are like, eh. But when I ask people about their previous experiences, what frustrates them to no end is the companies with the stuff on the wall or repeated and then do totally different. You know, one of Patty McCord's famous slides from the culture deck was the Enron, you know, core values of respect, integrity, and something. It was like, that was not how you got promoted at Enron. You know, it was like, take outside risk, cheat, and, you know, stab the next guy in the back. That's how you actually got promoted.
I'm happy you brought that up. But the one thing that I'm quite militant on is understanding our 5 core values. And if one of our team members, whether it's a dishwasher or a vice president of finance, don't know what they are, then I'll ask them to excuse themselves from their role until they have it memorized. Because for me, it's if I did not know intimately what my long-term girlfriend valued in me as a partner, and I always needed to be reminded of what that was, I don't think I would be a good partner. So I try to use some of those behaviors as a leader as well too, and as a team member, to ensure that we're all aligned behind those values. Other than
just one thing on that, the you know, Gary Ridge, who's the great CEO of WD-40, become a friend of mine. He said something on a podcast recently when I interviewed him that I thought was really interesting. He said, look, if you make decisions within our core values, you are safe, right? So rather than having a ton of rules, if people understand the values, those 5 values, and they need to make all of these decisions, you don't need a 500-page rule book. So they have to know them, they have to internalize them, because when some situation comes up that hasn't come up before at the restaurant or otherwise, it's step back and say, all right, what is the right thing to do here? I mean, our one or more of our core values should always be the answer to an ambiguous situation for an employee.
So I have to ask, as you know, a globally recognized expert on company culture, WD-40, it sounds like you have a relationship with this company. The most unsexy, untraditional business that, like, it's been around for what, decades and decades and decades. Is company culture for specific type of companies?
No, I think to me, your company culture is your operating system. So you're defining, either you know what your operating system is and you're kind of working on it or going with it, or you don't know what it is. And I think, again, it's not in business school. It's not, I think you either have to feel the pain of this and then want to solve it. It's not something that most people know how to do or know how to lean into. And frankly, most people, if you've ever been in any intensive leadership program, it's a big mirror. The goal is to get you exhausted and put up a big mirror and say, look, you're trying to build something that is inauthentically who you are and what your personal values are. Why are you trying to do that? Like how is that going to help you? So I went to a program 4 or 5 years ago and was like that. I was like, wow, okay, once I could actually articulate my personal core values, then it was really easy to understand what I wanted to get from the business. And I could own that and just be like, here's what I want. And if this isn't what you want, then it's a good time to exit stage right. And people did that.
Other than Southwest and WD-40, as you were building your culture, or even to this day, what companies do you admire for their company culture, or what companies are you learning from?
Yeah, I take a lot of bits and pieces. I know Netflix has gone through a lot of changes, but I've interviewed Patty McCord. They were the first company to just be like, here's what we value. Like the slide that says, like, you know, hard work and no results gets a severance package, and, you know, not a lot of work and great results gets a raise. I think HubSpot was one of the early adopters of their philosophies and has done a really good job, a local company here, of building a culture. Another great company is now Tenuity. Used to be Elite SEM, digital agency, which are also known for just terrible cultures. Usually, Ben and his team and Zach did a great job building and selling that business based on a tremendous culture. So it was just the more and more I would talk to CEOs, be like, wow, this like Michael's running a great organization. Like, pop open the hood. What do I find? I find a clear mission statement. I find, you know, well-articulated core values. I see operational, all this alignment. Every time I opened a hood of a great company, I would find the same things under it.
Yeah, and that's one thing that we try to do at our company is like everything is embedded into the playbooks and the way that we behave. So the way that we hire and fire people are according to our values and much, much more. Um, what type of leader or what type of behaviors does a leader need to exhibit to be able to lead a company culture? Is there anything that any common themes that really would jump out at you?
Yeah, I think the job of a leader of an organization is to do a few things very well, and probably not a lot of the things that the people are doing. So, yeah, look, when you're in the single restaurant or 5-person business, you're doing everything, right? But as you get up to multi-units, bigger business, 100 people, you should be setting the strategy, setting the vision, defining the culture, and then building up your other leaders and getting obstacles out of their way. To me, that's actually just that's the basic job. And as a leader, if you want to be a great leader, you need to love growing people, and you need to relish in other people's success and not have it be about you. You should be psyched to have 5 people gunning for your job if you're a really good leader.
Can you be a leader within the company but not be the flag bearer of the culture? And I'll give an example. Richard Branson at Virgin is great flag bearer. It would appear that he's the leader of the culture, but I wonder if there's his COO or some individuals that aren't as benevolent as him, um, and as much as a servant leader as he might be, who kind of understand the importance but are kind of in the shadows because they aren't as great at growing people. Are there still places in organizations for people like that? Or do you just a
Yeah,
lot of people like you and Richard Branson?
no, yeah, I mean, there are definitely places. I actually think one of the biggest mistakes that companies make is promoting individual contributors into leadership roles because they think they need to do that to get more compensation, to get more along, and they just don't want to do it. They don't like managing people. They don't relish in other people's success. They like closing the deal. They like doing the X. They like doing the books. But we push a lot of these people into those roles. So look, there's only so many A-plus players you'll have in an organization. So you'll have people who are always working on these things and struggling these things and wanting to be better leaders. I think the best leaders are the ones that are growing their people at faster rates than other people. But I actually think there's a whole group of people, and I've been writing something about this. I think this is one of the biggest issues in business, is defining people who should be great contributors on the team and who should be leaders. And we should stop associating leadership with more advancement or compensation in the organization. I mean, some of the greatest repeatable sins that anyone will tell you is promoting a great salesperson to sales manager, promoting a great engineer to lead engineer to manage engineers, when it's not what they're good at. It's not what they want to do.
If for the leaders within organizations that are watching this video who are totally bought into the culture, but they're struggling in achieving some success, or it's hard for them to get the ball rolling, what might they need to be aware of in maybe the missteps that you would try to avoid? Are there some best practices when they're just getting started?
Yeah, I mean, I would step back. To me, the thing that both Gazelles and Traction really do well is this offsites. You should be taking a day or two every quarter. You should be going offsite with your team. You should be doing your annual planning, working on the business. That's the time to have these discussions with a team and work through this stuff. If you never pull your head up, you won't make progress. But another counterintuitive thing is, when you figure out what you want and you put a definitive stake in the ground, not everyone's going to love it, and that's okay. And most people, when they actually sort this out, they lose half their company. I mean, Brian Scudamore's story of losing 100% of his company, and I've actually really tried to stop making everyone happy, and to me, just be authentic, tell people the truth, and then let them decide whether they're on board with that, or okay to exit, right, and be part of the alumni association. And you alluded to this before, and I meant to say it, but when you have a really great company culture and you're consistent with what you say and what you do, people feel like fish out of water. And rather than you having to lay them off or fire them, they actually come to you and they say, Michael, like, it's just, It's not, and like you say, you're like, great, let's part. They feel like they are not a fit, like they are on the wrong team because they're doing something different than everyone else. So I actually don't think people should be surprised that once they sort this out, and you probably have two groups of people that are frustrated and playing by these rules and that rules. And once you actually figure it out and say, hey, here's what we're going to do and here's what we're going to be, and I mean it and we're consistent, you shouldn't be surprised to lose 30 or 50% of people who aren't on board for that. But that's okay. Your job in the future is to make it super clear. And I say, fly that flag as high as you possibly can to prospects and partners and everyone elsewhere, so that, you get it 90% of the time right, of the people that want to be there and want to be on that journey. But I've heard from everyone, I think that you can expect to kind of have a shakeout once you do finally figure it out.
Yeah, whether I speak or host a workshop, or if I have somebody email me and they suggest like, okay, so should I just fire everybody right away? I'm like, no, like, how are you going to operate? Like, you
Right.
hired them. It's your responsibility as a leader to help them embrace this change. And at one point or another, you will come to a conclusion that this change isn't for them, and just let that happen organically.
Or they will come to that conclusion and save you. It's much better if they come to it, right? It's always better to, that for that person to be in control of the situation rather than have someone else tell them it's not working.
I totally agree. I want to move on to the last part of the conversation. I want to talk to you about your book. It is coming out shortly. I know that we can pre-order, and there's going to be a link for listeners and viewers to pre-order the book. And this is what I always recommend, because I've written a book before. Don't just buy one copy. Buy a few of them. If you have a management team, they'll appreciate it. But tell us about your book. When is it officially live? And
it's officially live October 1st, and it's called Elevate. And the book is about this concept of capacity building, which came out of a newsletter I started, actually a note I started to my team about 4 years ago called Friday Forward to 40 people, with kind of an inspirational note, a note about improvement, a story, something they could do. Really wasn't about business. Shared it with some people. They started forwarding it. 4 years later now, it's reaching almost over 100,000 people in 60 countries. And it made me, I originally went to write sort of a compilation of some of the best of these stories and ideas. And I got pushed by an agent to say, well, what's the story here? What's the lesson here? And I sort of, like, so why is this working? Why are people writing, telling me they're making decisions? And I realized how we had actually built our company was using the same concept of capacity building, or building people up holistically. And when I looked at all of these themes, I came up with, and these exist elsewhere in different concepts, nothing is new, but that they're all self-improvement falls under 4 themes of capacity building, which is spiritual, intellectual, physical, and emotional. And just quick summary of each. Spiritual is like, what do you value and what do you want kind of most? Like, where are you going? What's your compass? Intellectual is your operating system. How do you get better, smarter, faster, take on things, with less energy, and be able to get them done, and improvement. Physical is obviously kind of our well-being, how we feel, our stress level, all these things. And then emotional is our relationship to other people and external events. And when I looked at super high achievers, I just saw that they were kind of crushing all 4 of these areas, and we're constantly working on them. And it wasn't that these other people that we look at that are getting all this stuff done were better than us. They actually had just become elevated versions of themselves by locking in on what they want, getting smarter, getting better at what they were doing, having great relationships, being in good health. Like, these were the people kind of winning everywhere. And that's what a lot of the Friday Forward stories are about. And that's what we've focused on at our company. And I know you do this too, which is, let's build people up holistically. We work on all those things with them. Let's help them figure out their core values and what they want, and get them coaches and run races, and they'll be better parents and better spouses and better kids. And we get the best version of the employee out of that. So that's what the book's about. It tells a little bit of the story, goes into capacity building, and each chapter has some takeaways on stuff you can really implement kind of right away to do that.
That's amazing. I've said this for years now, the most engaged that I find myself is when I get an email from an employee or from my manager saying, "Hey, we're promoting Sarah." Like, that's awesome. I'm emotionless when I get a direct deposit because we hit our quarterly numbers. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, yay, for like 5 seconds until that dissipates. But hopefully, and I'm optimistic that there is this change in leadership, and being benevolent, being a servant leader, building great cultures are the attributes of some of the great best leaders that we're seeing right now. I operated in an industry where Gordon Ramsay was a celebrated leader, man.
Command and Control. That was my
Yes.
article today. Command and Control is dead. Yeah.
And when I talk to my dad, who's just this hard-nosed South American, he's maybe told me he's loved me once, and that was probably by accident. But he's like, "You're doing what for your employees? Like, what's an employee advisory board?" Like, and he's just not dumbfounded, but like, things have changed. I'm like, yes, they have.
And look, command and control leadership, which came out of the military and into businesses sort of from the whole time when people were, operated as almost machines. That's just been what everyone's grown up on. And you do what I say to do it. But the Army's not doing it anymore. And if you want to run a business and you think you're going to run command and control and people are just going to come work for you and enrich you, good luck. Like,
Yeah.
It'll eventually die, because in a free in the open market economy and the fluidity of jobs and the gig economy, like, people aren't going to work for you, and they don't have to. So people are going to have to change. The great leaders I've seen are ahead of it because they actually believe in it. But eventually, like, I don't think people are going to have a choice.
Absolutely. My very last question: if you were to start your company all over again, and you could pick one person to be your partner, who is very culture centric, past or present, who would it be?
This is one person, an employee.
Yeah, sure. In a senior leadership role.
Yeah, I mean, one of my first major hires was Matt Wool, who is our president today, and we are the classic yin and yang between a visionary and integrator, where we are on the same page about values and organization, where we're going. We disagree 80% of the time on a day-to-day basis, which is the tension that you want in that. I'm forward-looking and vision-oriented, and he's making sure that the train runs on the tracks today. So I actually think that dynamic is really important in the business, and people who are willing to openly disagree and debate those ideas, but who are ideologically on the same page.
Amazing, Bob. Thank you so much for everybody watching and listening. There's a bunch of links below this video. Pre-order Bob's book. It's out October 1st. Buy a few copies. Buy for your management team. And there will be a link to Bob's LinkedIn. Whenever he posts something on LinkedIn, like a small country of people come in and I'm watching as a fan. I'm like, how is he doing this? But we can talk about that next time. Thank you so much, Bob. I appreciate it. Have yourself a fantastic day, and good luck with all the growth and the success for your company.
Thank you very much, Michael.
All right, take care.